Hello, my name is Annika Presentati, and in this video I will be discussing intersectionality and how it relates to the classroom environment. This will be part one in a two-part series, where in this one I will be going over the concept of intersectionality. Intersectionality can be defined as being the concept that multiple identities can intersect within an individual, making it so that each person has a unique perspective on the world. For example, a person can be white and queer, or be black and disabled, each part of their identities giving more nuance to their life experiences as a whole and how they navigate society. The foundations of intersectionality lie in its early history in the 1980s and 90s when there were more women of color entering the legal academy because there had been activism to have more diversity in the faculty at various academic institutions. Many of them had backgrounds in activism, so when these people had started to examine many of the laws in this country, especially anti-discrimination laws, it was noticeable that there was intervention needed, and that the current system needed a new way to be interrogated and examined. This was mainly due to the fact that the legal system was mistreating women of color, specifically black women, and how it was likely due to how laws and biases were structured. Further in considering what this concept actually means, this quote stood out to me in the paper toward a field of intersectionality studies, theory, applications, and practice by Cho, Williams Crenshaw, and McCall. Understanding the trajectory of intersectionality as part of a larger critique of rights and legal institutions reveals how intersectional ones look beyond the more narrowly circumscribed demands for inclusion within the logic of sameness and difference. I mainly found intriguing in that it shows considering intersectionality is not necessarily a concept that should be used in isolation, but rather that is used in conjunction with forms of social justice and analysis. By seeing how there is more nuance to how oppression may affect certain groups and how there are those in groups that may feel more or less is important in moving forward, having conversations about how to better practice equity. Dolores Delgado Bernal also further shows how using intersectionality in a paper using a Chicana feminist epistemology and educational research can further evolve academia and education as a whole by addressing the failures of traditional styles of the past. Delgado Bernal says most feminists of color recognize that gender, class, race, and sexual orientation, not gender alone, determine the allocation of power and the nature of any individual's identity, status, and circumstance. Therefore, Dargan feminist epistemologies are crucial, as they speak to the failures of traditional patriarchal and liberal educational scholarship, and examine the intersection of race, class, gender, and sexuality. This quote in particular is poignant because of how it's possible to connect it to CRT and the layers of identity that can determine someone's ability to have privilege in this country. I also perceived her discussion as also showing how important it is for diversity to be multi-layered, since that is what is able to provide more complex perspectives in achieving social justice. An example of intersectionality that I would like to cover is how race and disability intersect, especially in education. Zeus Leonardo and Alicia Broderick cover in their paper, Smartness as Property, a critical exploration of intersections between whiteness and disability studies, how children that are white experience the intersection of disability differently than students of color. They mention that students of color are overrepresented in special education service provision, as well as being most commonly in very restrictive special education placements. This often occurs at much higher rates to these students as well. When discussing those that are white and disabled, though they are part of an oppressive group, it is important to mention that they are consoled by the power and promise of white as a social buffer. The fact that they are white does indeed give more social power in the educational system in America than students of color. The idea of intersectionality of race and disability is also covered in the paper Disability Critical Race Studies, DisCrit, Theorizing at the Intersections of Race and Disability by Subini Anama, David Connor, and Beth Berry. They both said that disabled students of color embodiment and positioning reveals ways in which racism enables inform and rely on each other in interdependent ways. Since these students opt in multiple ways, they experience educational society and in the education program. Now, to summarize the concept before moving forward with the second part, intersectionality is defined as when there are intersecting identities within people that make it so that their overall identity is added to and has more depth. This is especially important when discussing power dynamics and oppression in the United States. Intersectionality can be important as a framework, especially when it's used in conjunction with other concepts like critical race theory. It is also considered with discussing power dynamics that can be multi-layered with identities and disability and race. This is the list of my references. Thank you for watching my presentation.